Hello and welcome to the Virtual Care Basket. I'm Aisha Hilton and I invite you to find out more at virtualcarebasket.com. I hope you enjoy this interview.
Cool.
Hello and welcome to another Virtual Care Basket and Cafe event. I'm Aisha Hilton, the host, and today I have with me Warren Davies, and he is from the Unbreakable Farmer. And today we're talking about your mental health in times of crisis, which, you know, for many of us, things, our way of life has changed dramatically. Some people's not so much. My ex-husband's a farmer and he's just still going about his business. So Warren normally travels Australia talking about mental health issues and is passionate about supporting people in rural areas. So obviously your business has changed a bit too, Warren, now that you're unable to travel.
Yeah. Good morning. How are you? Yeah, it definitely has. It's changed dramatically, and I just look back. Someone put up a challenge the other day and said, "What were you doing 3 weeks ago?" Well, 3 weeks ago, I was in outback Queensland speaking to a group of farmers, it was about 3.5 weeks ago now. But and then all of a sudden things dramatically changed, and not only for me but changed for everybody. So it's it's thrown some challenges our way, and it's just been a matter of working through them and making sure that I can continue doing the stuff that I was doing. So.
And technology normally can help with that. We've tried multiple things this morning to go live. It's taken like 15 minutes. So thank you for your patience. What are you seeing as the main issues that are coming up for people, especially in isolation?
Look, it's I think there's lots of challenges, and I think you're a little bit like you were saying. I do a lot of work in rural and regional communities. That's where my passion is, and life is getting on as normal, but there is also challenges around that as well. That while you're busy, it's all good. It's when things might quieten down that that you find yourself in your own thoughts, I suppose. And I know, and even myself, I've found that challenging over the last few weeks. Thinking about things and still struggling or dealing with my mental health challenges on a daily basis. It's been challenging some of the strategies that I use to keep everything in check for myself, even personally. Sitting, working from a different space, like working from home, which I do anyway, but I'm on the road a fair bit, and in the last 12 months I've been really busy, so I've been on the road a fair bit. So sitting at home for weeks on end is not something that I've been normally used to doing. And prior to being a mental health speaker, I was a farmer myself. So sitting around is not one of those things that's conducive to to good mental health. But I think the most of the things that I'm finding is just there's a lot of frustration and anger, and then that presents in different ways and different challenges. And I think one of the biggest things that I've been saying to people that I've been talking to, or I've done calls like this, or live streams, either myself or with other people as well, is I think what we need to really do is take a step back and understand our emotions and understand that it's okay to ride that wave.
It's definitely a roller coaster for many of us. Like, you have a good day and you feel okay and you're like, yeah, I can handle this. And then the next day you're like, oh, you feel flat or unmotivated. And I think I have got a lot of friends that actually live alone. So they don't have anyone to actually be in physical contact with. And Zooming's great, or talking on the phone, but it's not the same as having personal contact.
And it's definitely not. It's even like me as a speaker, standing in front of a group of people and having that, that conversation live face to face is a lot different to doing this. Especially, for me, reading audiences and knowing how people are traveling and that I'm speaking to. This is hard, and plus I'm staring at this stage at a phone on a tripod instead of actually being able to, there's something about, physical connections doesn't necessarily mean, hugging and all that sort of stuff. That's that knowing that the people are around you, and I'm missing that. I know that,
and getting that feedback, it's a loop, whereas
Yeah,
we're
it is.
like
It's a
sort of
loop.
broadcasting out and there's not a lot of engagement. So if you're listening, feel free to comment. Let us know how you're going. Give Warren some comments if you've got anything to say, and let us know how you're going right now. So what strategies, like you've struggled with your mental health and you've got a toolbox that you share in your talks out and about, what are you recommending would be effective for some people right now that they could put in their toolbox and utilize to help with their mental health?
Well, that one of those important thing is that first step is just understanding that your emotions and how you are traveling, and understand that it's quite normal to one day feel really good and one day feel, either fearful or angry or whatever the emotion that might be presenting itself. That's quite normal, and don't beat yourself up about it. So understanding those emotions and identifying them and trying to control them, or not necessarily control them, but understanding who they are. One of the other really important things is about checking in, and doing check-ins and with yourself and with the people around, people that are in your support network or in your immediate family, in your close group of friends, making sure you're checking in with people and keep that connection, because connection is really important, particularly in times like this. I understand that physical connection can't be there, like we've just discussed, but making sure that you're checking in and making sure everyone's doing okay, but most importantly checking in with yourself and having those internal conversations, and assessing, if you are having a bad day, what was the trigger, understanding those triggers, and what can I do about that tomorrow to make sure that my day's better.
So if you were feeling lonely, like you at the end of the day you're reflecting and you felt crap for most of the day,
yep.
because you're feeling lonely, then a strategy might be that you could tee up a phone call or a Zoom or whatever, FaceTime with someone and connect one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've become really lazy at, and this crisis will teach us really well, is flicking text messages off. Just texting a friend and how you going and all that. Where we're not actually seeing them. So use me as an example. My mates, I'd see them at footy training. Not that I like my sons and that play footy, and I go out on a Thursday night teas at the footy club. You catch up with all your mates, but you might text them during the week, something funny or how you're going. But now that you haven't got that physical connection, I think more importantly now we need to use technology like FaceTime and Zoom and that to make sure that we're seeing each other's face and those smiles, and it can brighten up your day if you've seen someone, especially if you're really isolated and you're not seeing anybody, and like you said, living alone. That's really important to have that check-in, that face-to-face kind of conversation with someone, is really important. Connection is really important. And I'll towards the end I'll share those. They're three of my lessons that I always share. But another thing that I'm really big on, and I've developed, I'm developing, that's what I'm doing in isolation at the moment, is developing this thing I call the wheel of wellbeing, and understanding that we've got to keep our wheel in balance, in good times and in times like this, and understanding your emotions, making sure that each spoke in that wheel is balanced, because if it's not, the wheel will start to wobble, and if you keep driving that wheel while it's wobbling, it's going to eventually fall off. So understanding your well-being domains around emotional, physical, social, intellectual, spiritual, financial is a big one, but making sure that that connection spoke is also strong, and trying to keep them in balance, because if they're not in balance, as I said, that wheel will start to wobble and it'll fall off. So that's really important to understand them. And I think also, which we've seen displayed a fair bit, especially early on in this crisis, is around your values, understanding your values and what you live by. We've seen the debacles in supermarkets and places like that, where people
and I don't know any
of
those people.
No,
I don't have anyone who's
but
hoarding, but it is that fear that people have that's coming up and creating behavior that is probably some people's normal behavior, and it almost goes back to that real fight and flight reptilian brain response.
Yeah, and it's I think the values and your understanding your emotions kind of go hand in hand. But understand, what do you live by, and try and maintain those values. And I know for me, a lot of these things are things that I didn't do really well when I was at my darkest point, and they're lessons that I've learned along the way. And I think trying to stick to your values is really important. It plays a really important part in your mental health as well, because you can beat yourself up enough. Like, you can have some pretty ordinary conversations with yourself, and if you're letting yourself down as far as the values that you hold dear to yourself, you can beat yourself up a lot worse as well. So, making sure that you're sticking to them.
How do you have a tool, like how, I don't think some people actually even know what their values are and haven't perhaps reflected on them. And your values show up in your behavior often. And I used to not have, I had a list of values, and family wasn't in it. I didn't think of it as being one of my values, but then I looked at my behavior and I realized that family was actually my almost top value. Yeah. So it's just interesting, even just exploring what are your values and how they're showing up. And sometimes we have a value as an intellectual idea, but then our life shows us that we don't put any effort into that value.
Correct, and that's a really good exercise to do, and I'm happy to help people walk them through that exercise. But similar to you, family is my number one value, and I didn't realise that as a farmer, as a dairy farmer. I thought, I was striving to be the best farmer I could be, and produce as much milk as I could out of my cows and all that. And that's kind of where I say, you lose yourself sometimes. And I lost sense of what was my true values. So my values were around being a good farmer, and all of a sudden my whole identity was tied up as a farmer. And that was my biggest downfall when we actually lost our farm in the drought, is when we walked away from that farm, I lost my identity at the same time.
Yeah, and that's a really big thing when you have your job as your identity. And I think a lot of people who have lost their jobs at the moment, it's like, who am I without this job? It's like a suit that you wear, and now you can't put that suit on.
Yeah, and that's where it's really important to understand what your values are, because your values are really have got, you might be striving to be some, but that's, that shouldn't be. Everyone's different, but it shouldn't be your top value. Like, there's more personalized stuff that should be higher in your value list. Like, I always make a joke when I'm speaking, like, my number one value is family, and people talk about money as their number one value. My money value is about 10. That's why I'm standing in front of you talking and not sipping pina coladas on a tropical island. That's why, because I don't place that much importance. And I think you have to go through something like similar to what we're going through now that really puts into perspective what money's about as well. Like, losing your farm and losing everything that you'd worked for when I lost my farm kind of taught me that, it's not all that important, because life goes on. You can try and find, different path, which I did. Like, it took me a long time to find my identity again and find my purpose in life. But you can go on that journey, and just because at the moment people are feeling and understandably feeling pretty crappy about losing jobs and losing income and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I suppose if I put it into an analogy, when I did real estate for 3 years, and we used to do valuations and a lot of dealing with divorce and death and that, we do valuations and then do clearing sales from after that valuation. And the bloke, farmer or whoever it was, would say, I want 13 grand for that ute or whatever it was. Yeah. And the guy that I used to work with, the valuer, he'd say, if someone walked up the driveway And and we'd say the value of the ute was $7,000, say, for instance, put it on the value, and they go, well, I want 13. And we go, well, if someone walked up the driveway and offered you 10.5, would you take it? No, darn and and they go, yeah, probably. I go, what about if someone walked up the driveway and offered you $9,000 cash? Would you take it? And he goes, oh, definitely. So then all of a sudden he wanted 13,000, but he would accept 9. Yeah, so you understand that you've got to understand that whole thing about money's it's a funny thing, and it can play
it's
really
sort
funny.
of an arbitrary thing that something's only valued what it's worth to.
That's exactly
people.
right.
So, and I know through my own personal experience with farmers about the financial stress, and now I'm seeing like a lot of people in our community are facing unprecedented financial stress, and a lot of people don't have savings, and so it's good to talk about, like, yes, the financial stress is one of the biggest stresses, I think. That people face, that and the personal relationships, but we can't underestimate, I think, the impact that the financial and economic impact of what's going on people's lives. And I know a lot of people that I know have suicided actually did so over money, including dairy farmers back in the day. So it's just heartbreaking. So if we can help those people just to remain afloat, like, yes, there's government handouts, but even just dealing with Centrelink is enough to depress you.
And all these things are like trauma is a strong word, but like compounding trauma, because you're dealing with the loss of a job and then the loss of your income, and then that has effect on your identity and your self-esteem. So then you're struggling with that, and then you have to deal with, say, Centrelink or the government, like trying to get that money. And I know, look, I've done a lot of work over the last 12 months with in drought affected areas of Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, and then also in the bushfire areas in Victoria in the last couple of months. And I know, there's people that'll be that have got the paperwork sitting on their shelf because they just haven't got the energy, and that's understandable. So the thing is to just try and then don't let that affect your mental health as too much, because that can send you down that dark spiral.
And that's, I think,
everyone.
Talking about. Sorry, you go.
No, and I think that's something that's different about. And I've seen lots of comments from lots of farmers in the last few weeks about, that's the difference between this crisis and, say, the drought, is that everyone's in this, and and
we're all in this boat.
We're all in the same boat. So there shouldn't be. I felt like during the drought when I was losing my farm that I felt a lot of shame and guilt because, I thought I was letting my family down because it was not isolated, but, not everyone was going through that. Like, my best mates don't work in agriculture, so they really had no idea of what I was going through. So, but everyone's in the same boat.
One thing I saw, a friend of mine who is a trauma expert, Carissa Rogers, she did a post the other day that said, yes, we're all in the same boat, but we're actually, a lot of people are having different experiences. And some people, I know, even in rural areas, I know one lady, she's got a wedding dress business. For some reason, I thought that business would go down, but it's gone up. So we can't presume that everyone's having a terrible time. But if you are, it's normal as well. And then you need to commit to doing things to make yourself feel better. Like, one of the things I like is, if I'm feeling down, is just watching a comedy, and the physical thing of laughing will shift your energy and bring in the good hormones.
Yeah, and I think that's with any situation. Like, you take the drought, every one of my neighbours dealt with the situation differently because everyone's situation is different. But I've always found it, especially talking to lots of groups of people, even though people say that it's not affecting them, it will be in some way. So, like, if it's not a financial stress on you, you might be, because you've got plenty of disposable income in a normal world, you might be a bit of a party animal, and you love going out on a Wednesday night and a Friday night, and all of a sudden you can't do that. So that's having an effect on you as well. And I think in the short term, that's all good. But if it goes on longer, then it does have that effect. But we can't. Everyone's perception of any sort of challenge is their perception, and I always say that using my road for an example, my perception and effect on me of the drought was different to my neighbour and then to the next neighbour, and that because everyone's situation was different, and everyone, you know, it affected people in different ways. But just knowing what I know, especially like with doing the work that I did around droughts and bushfires and that you know, it generally affects the whole community. You know, I've had a conversation in the main street with a shop owner in my local town, and I've known him for years, and he was standing there with tears in his eyes, and I never expected that from him. But you know, 30 years of hard work is kind of a bitter pill to swallow when you have to shut your shop at the moment. You know, it's
and I mean, it's really weird what shops are open and what aren't as well. Like, it seems sort of arbitrary. Like, and the other day, someone told me people were arrested in rebel sports. So they want you to exercise. They don't want you to go out. If they don't want you to shop at rebel sport, then don't bloody open it.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and I think that creates a lot of challenges for our well-being as well, because we don't know how long this is going to go for. We don't know, like, some of the rules are different. Like, they're much stricter in Victoria than where my brothers live in New South Wales. They do things that we aren't allowed to do, and you know, we don't really want to live
but vice versa as well. But vice versa as well. That we can do things that they can't do, and it's really strange that there's no conformity.
But you can go stand in the queue at Bunnings.
No, and like you know, I'm you know, I'm always humble in saying what I say about my speaking, because I still pinch myself every day that this is the career that I found myself in. But you know, I don't normally stand in front of crowds bigger than 100, say, for instance, but yet, and I can't do what I do now, which I feel is vitally important at the moment, but yet I can go and stand in Safeways in our local town with, you know, 200 other people, and, you know, it's just, it's crazy. And look, I understand all of it, but it's just some of the rules are confusing, which is adding to that angst and that anxiousness, and that the anger sometimes that can play out in anger and frustration and all that. And they're the things that you've got to have strategies to stay on top of, because if you haven't, you know, that can eat you up. And, you know, especially if you were not in a very good starting point, this can end into that spiral that, you know, as you said, there'll be people that this isn't even affecting at the moment. They're loving having a break from work, but other people, they're into that spiral. They're already in a spiral, and this is just exacerbating that. Which
and I've noticed, you know, so people I know who already had a lot of anxiety, their anxiety is now through the roof, and it's almost in an uncontrollable sort of state, even if they're medicated. So I really feel a lot of compassion for that, because that just makes things so much harder. So with your work, like, what are 3 things you think people could do if they are feeling anxious or stressed? Like, obviously something like exercise, journaling, I don't know, what are your top 3 things?
Yeah, so a lesson that I got taught by a psychologist last year, which I thought was total mumbo jumbo, to be honest, and I'll be truthful straight out of that. I experienced a fairly traumatic event. I won't go into that, but it was a fairly traumatic event, and I was having flashbacks, and I was struggling with it all, and I wasn't sleeping, and I could feel myself starting to spiral on it. And I've got a really good support network behind me, like, because I'm just me. I'm just share my lived experience when I get on stage. I need some professionals behind me that I can lean on if I need to refer people to it. So I decided I better practice what I preach, and I rang up this psychologist, and she said to me, she said, look, I want you to go and do something for me. And it was 2 things. And one was breathing. So some breathing exercises just to relieve that, you know, that as part of that anxiety strategy. And then she said, I also want you to go outside, take your shoes off, and walk on the grass barefoot. and ground yourself. And I'm thinking, yeah, righto, whatever you reckon. I was totally
I'm a
not
tree
sold.
hugger from way back. When you go, I live across the road from a forest, and we just go over there and we just put our hands on the tree and just breathe, and you just feel that calm energy.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I started doing this going outside and doing the breathing exercises barefoot on the grass, and within a couple of days I felt really good. And it just happened that weekend we went for a drive down to Melbourne, because one of my kids lived in Melbourne, and we decided to go for a bit of a drive, and we ended up out at Warburton at the redwood forest at Warburton. And ended up walking in the redwood forest barefoot and hugging trees, and the energy that you can feel, it was just amazing. And until you actually do it and experience that shift in how you're feeling, you think it's, I understand how people can think it's mumbo jumbo, but it actually works. So that's, breathing's one of those ones, and doing exercises like that. But for me, headphones and in going for a walk with a bit of music or whatever. Music plays a big part in one of my strategies of trying to keep on top of things.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of them, and not one strategy suits everybody. And it's a matter of trial and error.
They're not very hard. Like if you scaffold a few of these together, it'll probably be quite effective. And if you do it regularly. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to go for a walk every day and listen to some music. I have this thing, daggy dancing. So I put on, 80s music and do daggy dancing, and that just shifts as well. So there's so many things you can do that are really simple, but they almost seem too simple.
Yeah, and when you think about all these things, and that's where, and not just as a bloke, because this is affecting females as well, but with footy not being on at the moment.
Yes,
that's an outlet. Like that's a similar outlet to doing daggy dancing. Like that's people play footy or play netball or whatever sport they play for that outlet. So you've got to find something to replace that at the moment, and that's and there's so many different strategies, and I've used lots. Some have worked, some haven't worked, and but I find exercise through like walking, music, doing some breathing exercises, and and I'm the first one to put my hand up, and sometimes it does get too much and they don't work, and you just got to keep persisting, and sometimes it's good just to call it a day and go to bed or whatever. One of the things that I do enjoy, and it's funny, we were just talking about this before we went live, about stuff that you put up on Facebook and that, as content, and I've got a page that no one follows. I've got a couple of family members follow it because they knew. But one of the things that I started doing as a dairy farmer, because I was always up early and bed late, was taking photos of sunsets and sunrises.
What's that page
called? It's called Sunrise to Sunset. That's what the page is called. And that's all I do, and I just post them on Facebook. No one looks at them, and that's all fine. It's about me. But I, like last night, like I just, even out our back door, if you look at the photos on that page, a lot of them are the same, because I just walk out our back door, look over the paddock and take a photo. But then if we're walking and the sun's going down, or I see the sun shining on the clouds, and all of a sudden it just shifts your focus on where you're at that stage. Like you might have had the most crappiest day, which yesterday for me wasn't the best day in the world. But last night we went for a walk, and I took a photo of the sunset as we were walking one way, and then we got around to the other side of where we were walking, and there was a nice tree, and there was different light angles and all that. So I took a photo there, and it just shifts your focus, and it takes your focus away from thinking about all the crap in the day, to just something that you can focus on. It's like going and sitting at the beach and watching the waves. It shifts your focus and your energy from being all self-centered about how bad your day's been. So simple things like that.
I've shared that page in the comments. So, or you can just check on Facebook. So now you got another liker. I just liked it. So it's there's lots of groups as well on that topic. So just scroll down till you see Warren's one.
Yeah, but
So
it's just
it's
simple strategies like that. Like, and that's
mm,
nothing. It's just, you've always got a phone. Everyone's got a phone in their hand generally,
yes.
and it's just like it's just like that's just one of the things that I do. I love taking, and that kind of has evolved a little bit because I love, I hate like say if we drove from my place to your place, which I did. I did a talk in Ballarat. Last year at the Melbourne Uni in Ballarat, and I reckon it took me about an hour and a half longer to get home than what it should have, because I was stopping, because I love taking photos of windmills and then of old buildings, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
at Navy York, like there's plenty of
I
all
love
that stuff to take.
windmills and
Yeah,
dead trees. I
yeah,
love.
yeah, and dead trees with against the sun, like with sunlight behind, like all that. So all of a sudden, it releases this creative thing in your brain, which
Mm,
just helps with. That's just a really good strategy that which is a proven thing. There are all those those colouring books available now and all that sort of stuff, which is the
yep.
same thing. It's just releasing your creative energy, and it just helps. It's all mindfulness stuff that we need to be aware
Mm.
of.
Yep. So if you're struggling, breathe, go for a walk, call a friend, and there are professional services. I don't have a list of them, but you can Google them. If you actually do need professional help, there is Lifeline and Beyond Blue and lots of other things that have been set up because the government's put a lot of money into that. So if you want to find out more about Warren and his work, you can check him out at theunbreakablefarmer.com.au, and also follow him on Facebook at The Unbreakable Farmer. So he's not broken yet. He keeps getting up. And whether you
Yeah.
have a crap day or a good day, there's always tomorrow. So I want to say thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully if these strategies and just having a conversation about mental health is helpful to you, and feel free to comment or ask any questions in the comments section and we'll get back to you. So thank you very much, Warren. I wish everyone a good day. And this has been another presentation by the Virtual Care Basket, which you could find at virtualcarebasket.com. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day. I'm off for a walk shortly, so that'll help with my mental health. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Good on you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. Hi, this is Aisha again. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to subscribe and to check out the website virtualcarebasket.com. You can also find out more about me at aishahilton.com. Have a fabulous day.